INSV Continia. Continia was a mariner.
Yes, he's the earliest mariner that we know of by name.
Okay.
From India. And he went off to Southeast Asia, married a local lass, and set up the first Hindu kingdom in the Mekong Delta, what is now Cambodia and Vietnam.
Okay. But tell me about these pictures. When are you setting sail and where are you going? And look at that. My goodness. Economist bole to one thinks that, mota mota chashma and not hip like this that you're doing. It looks like you needed a lot of training to do this. Who are these people? What are you doing here? Tell me.
So, just so that you know, the INSV Continia, as you know, is a stitch ship. It's a recreation of a 5th century ship. So, what Indian ships would have looked like 1600 years ago, during roughly the Gupta period. And it is based on coins from the Satavahanas and a painting from Ajanta and some texts. And we have recreated it without using any modern technology. So it's put together without any nails. It's stitched together with coir rope. And as you can see, it has sails. It has no modern amenities except some safety equipment. And the idea is to demonstrate that such ships were capable of going on great voyages across the Indian Ocean and exploring the Indian Ocean and beyond.
What do you mean it's got no modern equipment? Nothing?
No engine. So it is basically entirely sail powered.
Okay.
And as you can see from the photographs, that's me training with the crew to pull the sails up. And so it doesn't even have a rudder. It basically uses a steering oar. So it's completely different from a modern sailing vessel. I mean, it's not just different from a engine driven ship, which is most ships, but even modern sailing ships are completely different. So this uses very, very old technology.
When you say stitched, what do you mean?
As I said, its hull is not put together with nails.
So how does it sit?
Basically, it uses joinery and stitching. So there are parallel holes on the planks, and then ropes are taken literally like stitching a piece of cloth, and then held together with that. And then, of course, there's a resin called kudrus, which is then used to sort of close all the gaps in the plank.
So how does it withstand storms and things like that with nothing?
So that is what we're going to find out. That is the whole point. But we have been training on it for last few months. And I have to say, she has behaved very well. She has weathered some rough weather. But obviously, if you do a longer voyage, which we plan to do to Muscat in the end of the month, then we will find out how she actually behaves out at sea.
Okay. And what trial runs have you done before the Muscat voyage?
So since we put it in water in May, and then it was inducted into the Navy as INSV Continia. And since then, the crew has been obviously, we have gone many iterations, take it out to sea, sail it, there's something. Also remember, no living human being knows how to sail these ships. So we have had to learn from scratch the behavior of the ship out at sea. So even if you are an expert sailor in modern ships, this behaves in a very different way. I mean, you cannot do certain things you could do with a modern sport sailing ships that many of these sailors and the crew are used to. So we have to relearn many things. I have been going whenever there's a long weekend, going to Karwar myself and going through a training myself.
So who trained you guys to do this? Are they fishermen who are using it? Is it naval sailors, Coast Guard?
So this is a Navy ship. So there's a crew of 15 plus one random economist. And so all the other 15 other than me are Navy sailors. Some of them are national level sailors. But as I said, they all sail modern sports boats, which have completely different logic. So we have basically had to learn about how to sail this from scratch. Basically, tow it out to sea so that you're far away from rocks and things. And then you just experiment till you have a sense of, okay, this is what it does when you do this. And we have had a lot of help from the Omanis who had built a dhow, also an ancient dhow, with a design from a later time, but many similar characteristics. So we did some conference calls with them, and one of Captain Saleh, the captain of that ship, also gave us some tips. But a lot of it is, purely experimental. I
So
cannot
why?
exactly tell you how it will behave in an actual real voyage.
So what is the reason why you undertaking this journey? Why you undertaking this project?
So one part of it is to change the narrative of who Indians were historically. See, one of the things I've been trying to do, and not just this project, I've been writing these history books to show that Indian history is not what we have been taught to believe. That it's not the case that Indians were somehow a passive people sitting in India waiting for conquerors to come and give us civilization, and sort of we have no agency. This is not a history at all. I mean, even a very little bit of digging into our own history will show us that this is not our history. We have a history. We got a rambunctious history of adventurers and mercenaries and doing all kinds of interesting things. And one of the things we did is very early on, long before even the Phoenicians, who are famous mariners of history, we were sailing during Harappan times to the Middle East, for example.
Yeah, the seals were found in
There are seals and all kinds of things are found. There are records of people called Meluhans going to Samaria 4,000-5,000 years ago.
Amish has written, right, on the Meluhan.
Yeah, he has written fictionalized version, but it's based on actual history. And we had a port, Lothal and Dholavira and all of these places. But even later, it continues, and that's why they were sailing out to Indonesia. They were sailing all the way through to Korea. In fact, Korean history actually begins with the marriage of a local prince to a princess from Ayodhya. So there were, as I said, the ship itself is called INSV Continia. Continia was the name of the first Indian mariner that we know about by name. They were before, but we don't know their name. About 2,000 years ago, we don't have an exact date. But he went there, as I said, married a local girl, set up a kingdom called Funan, the first Hindu kingdom in Southeast Asia. And all subsequent kingdoms of that part of the world trace their origin to this marriage.
Oh.
Yes, so till even modern times, royal families of, say, for example, Cambodia, trace their lineage back to this marriage between Kondinya and Soma. You have a country called Singapore. There's another country called Indonesia. It names itself after India. Its currency is the rupiah. They actually have the correct pronunciation.
Rupiah.
Rupiah. Rupiah is the correct pronunciation, not rupee.
Yeah.
All
these countries, when you go, you'll find frescoes, you'll find sculptures and things, and you see the boats out there and the people on the boats who are, rowing or taking the stuff out of the boats, the porters and all that. The features are like the people of South India. The jewelry that
so there's enormous influence. The scripts to this day is derived from Pallava scripts. And unfortunately, this history is simply not taught. Now, of course, I'm part of the redoing of the NCERT textbooks. And, as part of that, we are inserting some of this history back. But just to tell you, the way history was told to us was that as if we were just a passive people. In fact, it's not just the impression you get from the background. This is something explicitly written. And I'm not talking about colonial history. So colonial times, obviously, I can understand. They wanted to tell you that, you have always been occupied. So they invented the Aryan invasion theory. But even later on, basically said, you Indians, you never cross the oceans. You are somehow sitting at home waiting for us to come and give you civilization. Now, that is true of the 19th century. But even in the 21st century, books are written with this logic. So, for example, there's a very common book by somebody called Charles Allen, who passed away a couple of years ago. He published a book as recently as 2017 called Coromandel. So it's a history of our coastline, the Coromandel coast. So it's a modern book, popular. You'll get it in any major bookshop, Bhari Sons or wherever. And what does he say in the very first chapter in the second paragraph? He says basically the Indians have had no interaction with the ocean except for a brief period when the Cholas raided Southeast Asia. Now, the Cholas raiding Southeast Asia is still taught, is a passing reference in Indian textbooks. But basically, the impression you will get is that our interaction with the oceans is that one Chola raid in 1025. We did nothing before that and nothing after that. Entirely a misrepresentation of our history. what is going on here is that you are being fed a history where you are made to feel that you have really had no part in world history. You just, maybe a large population, but basically you were hanging around doing nothing of
Waiting to
great,
be colonized.
waiting to be colonized. And that other people, now this kind of, I would say, Orientalism is a very important part of how global narratives are controlled. So be under no impression that this happens just like that.
No.
There is a fair amount of investment that goes into creating these narratives. Now, in recent times, you will have seen some withdrawal of this. Some of these Western writers are beginning to talk a little bit about how great India may have been in ancient times, etc. But do remember that it is a controlled retreat in the face of evidence put together by a new generation of Indian writers. But it is not the case that they have really changed their mind. What they are doing, be very, very clear, is a controlled retreat.
Prime Minister recently said that India is witnessing a psychological renaissance, he called it. And he urged people to break the Macaulay mindset. Could you explain to me what exactly is that mindset and how does India plan to break away from that now?
So the Macaulay mindset is not really about Macaulay the person. What it really is about is this psychological idea that we have imbibed into our nervous system almost, that we are somehow functioning because, as I said, civilization given to us by other people, and that we have never had agency. So, okay, the Mughals came and built Taj Mahal, that's fine. The British can come and do something, but we should not do anything. So now this is imbibed into us in a very fundamental way. It showed through, for example, when we wanted to build a new parliament. What was the idea? But, oh my God, what will Lutyens' ghost think about it? It's a free country. We can build our own parliament.
Or those lions are looking aggressive and not smiling.
I know, which is all strange, because if you look at the original Ashokan thing, they are sort of got their teeth bared.
Where are they smiling and benign lions? I would like to know.
Exactly.
In which jungle?
And even the original Mauryan lions.
Yeah.
Are meant as a projection of Mauryan imperial power. They are not, they're symbols of a powerful state. They are not some pacifist thing.
Yeah.
And so throughout you will see this thing that, if you look at colonial history and then even post-colonial history, you'll see this veneration of Ashoka. Now, Ashoka was actually an almost forgotten character in Indian history. He was rediscovered by the British historians in the 19th century. And then he was packaged as some sort of a pacifist. There is no evidence of him becoming a pacifist ever. He was clearly a Buddhist before he went into Kalinga. And his edicts clearly suggest that he was not a pacifist even afterwards.
But the entire narrative that we studied in school was that the war affected him so much.
Yes, but there is no evidence of it. It is just pure storytelling. The evidence is absolutely clear from inscriptions that he was already a Buddhist. No ancient text links his conversion to Buddhism, if you can call it a conversion, linked to the Kalinga War. In the one inscription where he mentions the Kalinga War and his regret for it, you have to see the very next paragraph of the context in which he's saying it. He's not saying it as some sort of a regret and apology to the people of Kalinga, because this inscription is not in Kalinga. It's in far away in what is now Pakistan, where he says, yes, I killed all these people, I feel great regret. And the very next paragraph he says, but if you forest tribes behave badly, I'll do the same thing to you. It's a threat. And there are Sri Lankan texts which are very often used to eulogize Ashoka. The same text tells us about how he carried out massacres of
his brothers,
of the Ajivikas, of Jains. All of this, he has multiple massacres that he's carrying out.
Yeah.
There's no suggestion that he became a pacifist at all. So why was he? So the question is not about this history itself, which is clearly false. The question is, why did the British take it on?
Yeah.
Basically, this is part of that same agenda, okay, you have an ancient civilization. There's clearly evidence that there were great empires in the past. But look, your best and most important emperor was a nice pacifist chap. Okay, so he's the guy you should follow. Okay, why? People like Shivaji are somewhat uncomfortable, and you see the same thing in the later period as well. If you read
even the freedom struggle, no, you're always told that the moderates were the good guys, the extremists were the
yeah,
bad
the
guys.
very use of the terms moderates and extremists.
That's what we studied, right?
Yes,
All of us.
whereas the terms, what did Aurobindo Ghosh, later called Sri Aurobindo, called the same combinations. He called the so-called extremists as the nationalists and the other guys as the loyalists. So the other side is shown in the literature of the nationalists as being collaborators. So you have to be very careful with the use of these terms. The very fact that this terminology is used tells you who told the story after independence into our textbooks.
Right. So we have to develop a language of our own.
Yes.
Which means does it mean rewriting the past language, or is it a future thing?
No.
Because
Look at the original primary evidence, and based on that, you write a story that is reasonable. Not all of it will be clear. I mean, we debate what happened yesterday on our TV channels, so it's not unusual that historians should debate what happened 4,000 years ago.
Okay.
But then look at the evidence and begin to look at it. It's not like it's not like Romila Thapar was having breakfast with Ashoka.
Right.
She's also trying to interpret the same text that I have.
Yeah, but the allegation is that the BJP or the ND government, ever since it's come to power, they are rewriting everything with ineffective information. And
so the point is, it is perfectly fair to criticize where there is primary evidence that contradicts what's in the textbook.
Okay.
Perfectly fine. If such a thing is found, I will be the first to stand up and say this should be corrected. However, most of what you have, as I said, I can take you through all the textbooks, and every other step you will find some twisting. I mean, something as foundational as Ashoka is fictitious. So you can imagine what is there right through the whole narrative building, right through to modern times. I mean, all these global indices, for example, will show you, Nepal being put 50 ranks above India in democracy index till, few weeks before it actually has a coup. This is the kind of research and narrative building that goes on. Yours and my Wikipedia are continuously being twisted in a particular way.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate the effort and energy that goes into controlling global narratives.
You've literally run a crusade against this, push to stop India's sovereignty when it comes to, the big tech platforms, how we are battling it, how India wants to set a narrative, how it is so difficult because the big tech platforms, they own everything. They have the narrative grip on the world. Explain to me this war that you are taking on.
So you have to understand that this is done through layering. So this is not very different from how money is laundered. So what you do is you create many layers. So, if any money laundering happens, it comes from some dubious source, then it goes to some Cayman Islands or some such place, then it will be sent to another place. So after many layers of things, it then comes out as white money somewhere. Exact same thing is done in managing narratives. So first of all, in supposedly well-known journals or something, some relatively innocuous research will be published. Okay. Now then it will be layered into say a media report.
Or a
university paper. And so on and so forth. So you will basically create a circular referencing racket, which will then pop up on the basis of that in Wikipedia. It will be there in various kinds of social media. And then a certain narrative will be built where that becomes the default narrative. Now, you can argue against it, but do remember that even in arguing against it, you are having to accept that framework of discussion. So, when you say, for example, you are doing artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, artificial intelligence is being trained on so-called good data, right? It has to be, everybody will agree, no, you should have authentic data and believable data. So what is this authentic data? So they will say, see, we will take it from well-known institutions. Now, who decides what is a well-known institution? So, for example, then Sweden, there's an institution called VDEM, Varieties of Democracy Institute. Now, these chaps are funded by the same Soros, the same, those kinds of USAID type organizations. And there are several of these guys. Now, they have on many layers created these indices. Now, you will train artificial intelligence based on VDEM, Freedom House, and all these kinds of things. And I have written papers to show how their processes of research are extremely dubious. It's the opinions at best of a tiny number of experts who they don't even tell you who they are. I mean, it's not some great objective basis on which these indices are being created. They are based on some opinion. And when you question those opinions, there is a lot of pushback, or they don't reply and doing all kinds of things. And so I'll tell you a full story on this just now. So what happens is that artificial intelligence will now be trained on this. Now,
so the more the papers that come out from these institutes, the
LLMs, referencing cycle, LLMs begin to catch that. So now, supposing your grandkids, let's say, 20 years from now, Google up, is India a democracy? The system will say, no, India is not a democracy. It'll use some term that they are today innocuously inserting into the conversation, that it's a elective authoritarianism or some funny term will be used. And that over time will become hardwired into the system.
Like moderates and extremists.
Yes. And so this is the same thing. The same way in which we completely deny our maritime history and the moderates and extremists, we will have electoral authoritarianism or some absurd term which will down by the default. Now you can argue with your grandkids that this is not the case, but this is what they learn in the textbooks. And the guys who are writing the textbooks will call the same thing. And so this goes on. So I have been challenging this for a while, and I'll give you one example of how I have won some of these battles. So the question is, why is all these VDEM, Freedom House, all these, Press Without Frontier, Reporters Sans Frontier.
Reporters Without Borders or something like that.
Some French acronyms, laga do. Why should they be of any importance? Why should we take them seriously? How did they enter into the ecosystem of intellectual debate? So firstly, obviously the same 5-6 institutions, various kinds of international NGOs, mostly US billionaires basically, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, USAID, Soros, those kinds of guys, fund through layers these institutions. Now these institutions come up with these things, but they still need to be given another layer. So what used to happen is that the World Bank had something called the World Governance Indicators. It had a website, and what it did, it created these World Governance Indicators and gave them a stamp of approval. So when, for example, real world people like JP Morgan, let's say, creates or for example, the sovereign ratings, they would use the World Bank's World Governance Indicator as part of for sovereign ratings, for example, 20% of the weightage went to this world. Now you think World Bank, World Governance Indicator, stamp of approval ho gaya. Now you dig into this and you discover the following thing. It's actually not based on anything the World Bank has done, but on two random researchers who are not World Bank employees, who are the persons who are in charge of this World Governance Indicator. And if you research it enough, at the bottom there's a small disclaimer which states that, World Bank and its staff are not in any way responsible for these indicators, and that if you have any questions, go and talk to those two chaps. So I actually did that because I questioned many of these democracy, happiness, all these kinds of indicators. And I wrote to the World Bank.
Where Afghanistan is a happier place than India.
No, everybody is a happy place except India. So I asked them, how is this possible? Because, we had Reporters Sans Frontier. Once actually, I think it was Reporters Sans Frontier. Or somebody where where India's press freedom was less than that of Afghanistan and Pakistan. I remember this. It was 2-3 years ago. So I questioned this whole their methodology, etc., and I wrote to World Bank saying that please tell me how are you using this. So very quickly they sent me back a letter saying that sorry, we are not responsible for all of this. These two researchers are, and then you write to them, they will tell you we have not done anything. You write to VDEM. You see, no responsibility. So I questioned this whole thing, and India and some other countries also raised this issue in about a year and a half ago. And then the World Bank looked into it. And I think in late 2024, they issued a notification saying that they're withdrawing the world governance indicators and relooking at how to rejig it. So pushing back matters, but it requires a lot of intellectual effort. But it is well worth doing it.
Yeah, because it impacts on so many things. If investors want to put in money, they look whether these countries are democracies with functioning systems and things like that or not. And if we are not, as per this VDEM and the others, then they will not send in, the FDIs won't come in and all that will happen, right?
And you see, certain default narratives will get set. Now unless you dig in that far, those default narratives will drive a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
For example, our sovereign rating, I have been saying for years, is at least 2 notches below where
we ought to be.
Now, one of the rating agencies has upgraded us, so I personally think is 1 notch down. But the others, we are still 2 notches below.
So do we battle it or do we bring out our own ratings? What should we do?
So one is that
what does America do, for example, or Europe?
So basically what you have to do is to battle it. Well, they are not going to battle it because they are beneficiaries of the system.
So what do they do to become beneficiaries?
So, well, they control the system. Look at who are the big S&P, Fitch and Moody's.
Yeah.
They are commercial organizations owned by Western shareholders.
So we have our own billionaires, no? So we should also have one.
So absolutely. So I have been thinking about this for a long time, and since I come from the financial field, and at some point I said, look, I used to be Deutsche Bank's global strategist. I'm from the pinnacle of their system. So why don't I attempt to do this? So a few years ago, I actually, over a few weekends, I created my own system and tested it, just light testing, and discovered that I can outperform all of these ratings by backtesting it. But then, you see, issuing it from the Economic Advisory Council would not work. I mean, giving sovereign ratings to ourselves and the rest of the world, not going to work. So I then said, look, a commercial organization should take this project forward. So I then thought, who could it be? Now, India's own credit rating agencies don't do sovereign ratings. This is part of the narrative thing. See, they are large companies, but we have been told ki apna Indian,
stay in your lane.
Stay on your lane. And in any case, CRISIL, which is the largest one, is owned by S&P. So I took it to CareEdge, which is the second largest, but it is Indian owned. It has some foreign shareholding, but it's basically Indian owned. So I called them in. They had come to me for some other work, and I said, look, here is a project. Would you be interested? And to their credit, they took it on. And then they ran with it. So they sort of built on the methodology I had suggested. They refined it. It's made it much more robust. Then took the data through it. I told them, don't need to file, just use IMF data. So that nobody accuses you of bias.
Data manipulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they, in October of 2024, they issued first, I think in April of 2024, they issued the methodology for comments, and everybody agreed it was a good methodology. So in October 2024, they issued 39 countries sovereign rating, suo moto.
Okay.
They issued it. Now, we now have 14 months of data of what happened to those sovereign ratings. Now, you'll be pleased to know that since they were issued, something like 13, 14 credit events have happened. So either somebody got upgraded or downgraded, etc. of those 39 countries. This CareEdge model predicted every single one of them, suggesting that it is actually a better model than that of S&P, Fitch, and Moody's.
Okay.
So it is outperforming that model, but we'll have to create a longer track record.
And more models, right? Like this is only for sovereign ratings.
Yeah, we can do it for democracy. We can do it. So I have now talked to a university professor, and I'm working with him to create our own democracy index. Of course, once I have created the system, I hand it to them to run, because it
Yeah.
is not credible for me as a government economic advisor to run them.
Huh.
And I always make sure that model that I have put is put up for scrutiny, so that there's academic scrutiny of it. Then tell me if my model, if you think the methodology is wrong, tell me. I'll change the methodology if there's a reasonable. But after everybody agrees that this is a credible methodology, then whoever is running it puts data through it and it gives a certain result, then you have to stand by that result.